Okay, welcome everybody to another great chapter two. This show is always super fun, packed with ideas and sharing from fantastic authors who are working on some amazing books and really inspiring people about how they can adopt some of these new beliefs and practices and principles into their work. This week, we're going to be talking about a culture of safety with Alla Weinberg. She's the author of this fantastic book. It's released on Sense and Respond. And you know, these books are so great. They're like 40 minutes, read them, get some really brilliant insights about a very specific topic, get really deep on it and really understand how you can sort of start to adopt some of the principles and practices that are shared in it. And with chapter two, it's always that style where we'll do a sort of big idea about what the book is about, and then we'll go narrow and dive into a very specific part of it. And so with that, let's welcome Alla to the show. How you doing?
Hi, Barry. Thanks so much for having me.
No, it's absolutely my pleasure to have you. You know, I'd say this is like, I always feel like this show is like my free personal development budget. I just sort of go and spend time with really great people who are thinking about really important things. And I always end up leaving smarter. So it's a joy for me to do this. And this topic, I think, especially like safety at work, I think it's so pertinent. And it goes everywhere. You know, every company, your situations at home, to work, wherever. I think this is such an important topic. So, why don't you tell us about the big idea for this and what really sort of inspired you to write this book?
Well, what really inspired me to write this book is actually just being a woman working in the tech field, and it hasn't always been the best experience. And I've been in many environments where I didn't feel safe, and I couldn't work and show up at my best or be promoted or just do my best work. And right before I wrote this book, I had an especially difficult experience. And so I wrote the book as kind of self-therapy, but also as a way in hopes to change this for the future and you know, maybe help other people not have to experience these kinds of things. So
yeah, well, first of all, thank you for doing that. You know, I think it's well documented, and I've observed, and I'm sure I've been responsible for moments where I've created an unsafe environment, whether intentionally or not. But I think what's really powerful for someone like yourself is to take those experiences and then think about how you can encapsulate them to help people move forward. I always think that's one of the most noble inspirations, if there is, to actually try and bring some better into the good and create great artifacts and lessons to be shared and scaled. So yeah, thank you very much for doing that and putting that together. So this notion, again, I think of safety or psychological safety, you know, it's one of these sort of, I often think it's difficult for people to define, to understand, to really get a grasp of what it means. Could you share maybe, you know, what your definition of it is, and just to help people understand, you know, the mindset that you come into when you think about safety at work?
Yeah. And this is part of the big idea and central idea of the book, is that psychological safety is a biological, and more precisely for me, a neurological state versus something that I think about, a cognition or some kind of thought that I have. So it's not that I go around thinking, oh, I'm safe, or it's okay to speak up in this meeting. It's actually a state of our nervous system in my body. My nervous system is relaxed. It's not on alert. It's not in fight or flight mode. And that's, I think, the really big key there, is that psychological safety is a state of your nervous system and also your brain. It's a neurological state. And so if you're trying to create a psychological safety, and some companies I've consulted with have done this, they're like, okay, we're going to send out this big email that says, we value psychological safety. You're all safe now. You can say anything you want in a meeting, and nothing changes, because you can't say you're safe to people. It's not a thought, it's a state. It's a physical state within our bodies.
And I think that's a fascinating way to describe it, right? It's funny, you're reminding me of these emails that go out to say we now have psychological safety. Or another friend of mine, Diana Kander, who's fantastic. You know, she's written a number of great books, and she often has this sort of like spray can that has psychological safety written on it, and she's, just to make fun, she sprays it and goes, no, everything's fine, everybody. But
We're good.
the way you sort of separate that, I think, is such an important aspect, right? There's the notion of people thinking that it's some sort of cultural moment versus actually going to a biological and neurological state of the individual. Which is fascinating to hear someone talk to it in that respect, right? I think a lot of, obviously with the Aristotle project and the work of saying that psychological safety is this #1 indicator for high performance teams.
Yeah.
I think that has been, or maybe it's my viewpoint, is that it was interpreted as a cultural state of a company rather than an individual state. So how did you get to that sort of, because I think that's a really important insight that I don't really hear many people talk about. Could you elaborate a little there?
Sure. I actually believe it's both because, and I write about this in the book, that a culture for me is the outcome or the result of how people relate to each other. And
Yeah,
part of the and Project Aristotle talked about this too. It's our interpersonal relationships. That's what creates psychological safety. So it is an outcome of how we relate to each other. And because biologically our brains are hardwired to be such social creatures. And again, ancestrally, we needed to depend on others to survive out in the wild, right? Before we had more modern technology and housing and everything. What happens is I need to feel safe again, and my nervous system needs to feel safe in my relationships with my coworkers. And I need to, not only that, I need to feel relaxed when I'm talking to them. And I need to feel socially connected. So safety is, feeling socially connected is a sign of safety. But again, it has to do with your individual relationship, your interpersonal relationships with your coworkers and on the team, and how your like nervous system reacts to that specifically.
Yeah, and so what would be some of the signals then, that you think to help people understand that, am I feeling psychologically safe, or am I in an environment or team where I feel that, or what would be some of the clues that would exhibit to them that they do have it or they don't?
Yeah. Well, some of the clues to exhibit that you don't have psychological safety is you as a team don't talk about boundaries and what works for people and what doesn't work for people. Some people experience microaggressions and others aren't even aware that that's happening. People aren't speaking up. During meetings, I'm talking with a lot of managers, especially right now, where people are like, oh, I have these staff meetings and I ask folks, what do you think? And then there's nothing. It's just silence. Yeah. It's just crickets. Or if your manager is in the room or their manager is in the room, then you don't push back or you don't disagree. You kind of just avoid having hard conversations, not giving feedback to people, back channel conversations in Slack, like there's a meeting happening and then there's a back channel in Slack where people are kind of talking, about that and, making fun or those kinds of things. A huge sign that there isn't psychological safety. And also, I mean, very simply, if you have to give anonymous surveys to get honest feedback from people, you don't have psychological safety because you're not willing to speak about what's happening openly and honestly with each other.
Yeah, no, they're great cues, and I'm self-reflecting. I know I've been guilty of some of these things, and I've definitely observed plenty of these things as well, right? I think those very simple examples are just really, really good for people to get a sense of like what's happening here, right? Really good. So one of the things of the show is we always love to talk about these big ideas, and you've given some great examples of helping people be conscious or aware of if safety is existing in the company, but also within yourself. I think is really good. But we always love to dive into like one sort of specific area or chapter of the book. And, you've picked a really interesting one. So tell us which one you've picked and why.
I've picked chapter 3, which talks about the nature of fear, because in my book, what I propose and what I say is that the opposite of safety is fear. And it's a really deep-rooted, again, tied to our biology and our survival instincts, a deep-rooted fear that at work, our basic human needs for safety, connection, and autonomy will not be met, and we will die. Like, this is not a conscious thing that people think about, but this is what our body is checking for all the time. Our body is designed to be a huge physical sensor for anything that threatens our life. And so, and this is where that the nervous system and the brain come in. All they're doing all day long is sensing, is anything threatening my life? And we have certain basic human needs for survival, such as safety, social connection, and autonomy. And all the time, every single day, everyone, especially in the Western world, is walking around consciously or unconsciously scared with fear every single day. Just in our culture, we call it stress. We don't call it fear. It's a euphemism. We don't call it fear. And that's a part of the problem. We don't call it what it is, so we don't know how to deal with it properly. And so we lead with very much fear-based practices and are very reactive to things. We can't make good decisions. We can't create safety in our team. We can't imagine. We can't create. We can't innovate. All of the things that all companies want are blocked, just again, because we're not thinking about human beings as biological creatures that have these very basic human needs.
Yeah, I really enjoy, again, the way that you, again, label it as fear, right? And how it's relabeled sometimes as stress or anxiety or pressure or nervousness or whatever it might be. But I think getting to that sort of like root word of fear is, it gets quite pointed then for individuals, yeah, right? That can, have some of these side effects of showing up stress, anxiety, and just maybe what I'm also hearing is like the inability that gets in the way of you doing your best work or your best contribution, whatever that might be, the situation that you're in. I think is fascinating to hear. Another person we had on the show previously was Rich Sheridan, and he wrote this fantastic book called Joy at Work. He runs this like really fantastic business in Michigan. It's where they invite people from all over the world to come and see the way they work. And he talks a lot about like his number one job is to suck fear out of the room. That's actually what he puts his job description as the leader of the company, to sort of say, that's my number one job. I just got to keep sucking fear out of the room.
That's
to help
100%.
People. Yeah, no, he's amazing. Really, really encourage folks to check it out too as well.
This is what I wanted to mention, is that this is the number one skill that I believe leaders must learn in order to create psychological safety in their teams and in their organizations. They have to know how to regulate their nervous system when they feel fear, how to feel their fear, how to regulate their nervous system, and how to continue to expand both in size and in volume the amount of fear and discomfort they can stand as a leader before their body goes into survival mode and before that all of that takes over. That's it. That's the number one thing.
So how do I start practicing that? Because we're here at Nobody Studios. We're trying to launch 100 companies in 5 years. I'm meeting entrepreneurs that have ambitions, dreams of building companies, teams that are struggling to get their ideas off the ground. Like, fear is real. It's huge. So what can I be doing better to help these people? How can I start to build up that capability in myself? What are some of your tips first as we sort of start getting into it?
Absolutely. So I have several practices in the book, and the first one is in that chapter, in chapter 3, is to have a fear inventory and do it every single day. So actually spend time writing out by hand, because it's going to help your brain by hand, not typing. Write out all the fears that you have around today, whatever work that you're doing, whatever conversation you may be having that you're trying to prepare for, that you're scared about. You just write it out, stream of consciousness, to get it out of your body, to really see it in front of you. And the best part is, if you write it on a piece of paper, you can rip it up and it feels really good. And this way, it does, it feels really good. This way, it gets it out of your head, it gets it out of your nervous system and your body. You can also say, hey, these are fears, and they're not necessarily true. And the fears don't have to be in the driver's seat anymore. They're always there. That's a human thing. but let's put them in the back seat as passengers versus the drivers for you. And you can do this in a team too. Like you can all go around and be like, here are the fears we have about, you know, launching this product or building this feature or doing this company. Let's all actually have a conversation about what we're scared about.
Well, I love this, right? So one practice I do is journaling, and like especially at the moment where there's a lot happening, it's such an amazing practice for me. So I'm literally going into my journal now, and I used to write like hopes and my top 3 feelings, like how I was feeling that day. But I am going to put fears as another area that I write these down. I'm afraid that I could fill up that, spend most of my journal is going to be taken up by that, but
it will be for the first bit because there's just a lot of buildup in there. You got to get it out.
I'm telling you, there's plenty. There's no doubt about that. So what's been some of the fun places you've got to sort of bring this to life then, or some examples for you that really sort of help people understand like how they can go about doing this? Like I'm definitely going to add it to my journaling, and I'm happy to report back if you're open to listening to what all my fears are, if you're willing to hear some of them. But what are some of the other examples that really shine to you as people sort of bringing this to life?
The biggest examples for me, and again, having to do with emotions, fear is definitely one of them, but learning the skills of how to share our emotions at work. Again, just like fear, we're feeling things all the time. We just tend to kind of turn down the volume on it when we're at work. But emotions and emotional safety, which is a step to creating psychological safety. And this is also something that I see in psychologically safe environments. If we're in a meeting and we can very freely share our emotions, saying like, hey, you know what, when you said we should go, you know, this direction on this project, I really started to feel angry about that. And here's why. And actually speak about that rather than hold it back and feel angry, resentful. Stop inviting that person to meetings, you know, start to create workarounds and stop collaborating, and work starts to suffer. So being able to do that, but also being able to have what I call clearing conversations with each other as a team, which is very important. So something happened in a meeting and my feelings got hurt. Feelings get hurt every single day. We just never talk about it.
Yeah.
But wouldn't it be great if we could clear with each other and say, hey, you know, during this conversation, my feelings really got hurt there. This is what hurts for me. And that other person to really hear you and really see you and really understand you as a human being. Those key things, that's going to create that safety. That's going to create both in your brain, in your neurology, in your relationship. I know if something goes wrong, we can talk about it. We can repair it.
Yeah, so I just want to encourage people, like check out this book. It's a fantastic, easy, bite-sized reads with like, you're probably already getting a sense of how many great little tidbits there are in there. And one of the things we always love is for people to ask questions. If you have a question, don't forget to put it in the comments below. But we also love feedback. So if you're sitting at home and you have one of these devices, they're sometimes known as gadgets or phones. All you got to do is like take out your phone and point it at the screen with its camera. And if you can find a dinosaur somewhere on the screen and click on it, you're going to get a fantastic feedback form to sort of share with us what you love about this show, what was interesting, what was fun. So we can sort of clear in our own minds like what was great about today and super fun. And because it's one of the most important parts about keeping this fun, interesting, and helping people understand. All right, so Anna, before we finish then, like what are, for you then, if people were going to take one more little tip, you've given so many great ones, I'm going to do my fear listing, this notion of clearing. How would you encourage people to sort of get started on this journey? And maybe some of the things you've tried yourself as you sort of started to figure out how you could sort of do your suck fear out of the room or make your workplaces more psychologically safe.
I think it's for people to just do a little self-assessment. Where do I hold back? What am I not saying? What am I feeling that I'm not even acknowledging for myself? What's really going on for me? Some self-reflection. I think we get busy. There's a lot to do every day. We have our to-do lists, we have our things we're operationalizing. We're always like go, 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 emails answering, we trying to get to that inbox zero, but actually taking that pause. You're like, what am I feeling right now? What's happening for me? What am I thinking? Where am I spending energy avoiding or not speaking up or performing in some way because I don't feel safe? When you know what's happening for you, then you can start making that shift.
Yeah, I think stellar advice. I can only, as I say, share how helpful I've just found journaling for me is this reflection tool to look back on what were some of the concerns or the lessons or the things. But now that I'm going to add fears to them, I'm pretty excited to see where it goes. So listen, it's been absolutely fantastic to have you on the show. Thank you very much for sort of joining us today. Again, folks, don't be afraid, like reach out if this is an area that you need help, support. You can find us here. Make sure you get the book. It's fantastic. Thank you very much, Alla Weinberg, for joining the show.
Thank you so much, Barry.
See you next time, everyone.